SportDev.
Thank you
Welcome,
for joining
everyone.
Sports
And,
Development Series.
Glad to be here.
We yours truly, Buma
On
Ekiora.
the eve of the World Cup, especially the UEFA Champions League final.
SportSdev series is sponsored by Arewa Baobab fruit powder,
Shouldn't be last year.
one of the most nutritious substances on the planet. Get your Baobab fruit powder from arewabaobab.com.
But yeah, we got my main man Mike. You know, one of the respected minds in football. My man is here. I wouldn't have anyone else here to talk about football. You know, respectfully.
Just want to add, I always remain loyal. You
My
know,
man.
if you have any appointments, you can always call me for that.
Yeah, 100%, man. Now, they're very, you know what? You hear a lot of people talk about the sport, and yeah, you know, some of them have cred and they talk about it, and you know, because they play it at a high level, so you respect some things they say. You know, like I watch, you know, Mikel's podcast. You know, shout out to him. He does a good job. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there are very few people that kind of know certain things that they watch, and my man, you're one of them, man. So
Oh man, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm happy to have a platform to speak. I just tell the way I see it from having watched the game since I was a child.
yeah,
But if people want to listen to the things I have to say, I'm happy to always speak.
100%, 100%. Meanwhile, what do you think about the you know, Unity Cup final? What do you think about the Unity Cup?
Honestly, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think when one speaks of the Unity Cup, you have to separate the simple fact that Nigeria didn't qualify for the World Cup, because I think if you look at it through those lenses, then you watch it and you get very upset. But really, I think it affords Eric Schell a platform to discover players that he wouldn't otherwise have a chance to play in any real friendly matches or international or, you know, competitive matches. So for that purpose, I think the Unity Cup does serve its purpose. Yeah, I don't think anybody should be going around boasting that Nigeria won the Unity Cup. It's always great to win, obviously, but if anything, what we should be celebrating is the discovery of a guy like Benjamin Frederick last year, and also a guy this year. Seems like we have a guy in Femi Aziz that stepped up. But also, you know, even the French players, like the defensive partnership we have, Igor Ogu and Waiwu, the center backs. Those guys have Ogu has actually, he played during the Nations Cup, I believe, but you know, as a French player. But getting those guys to show up and play, seeing a guy like Terran Murphy still being out there, he's the fourth in line in the striker position right now, right? So hey, let him go out there and play. So to that end, I see the benefit of it. But if anyone, I don't think anyone should be puffing their chest, and I think we should pretty much understand what it is. It's just B teams playing each other, and when we say B teams of Nigeria, we're also playing B teams of countries that are way below the ranking from us. So
yeah, and I think, you know, it from what I saw, right, it seems like the depth, it increases our depth. Like you mentioned, the back four played pretty well. You know, Femi Aziz is one to watch. I haven't looked him up. Where does he play?
Millwall.
Oh, he plays Millwall.
Yeah, Millwall, and he was the player of the month in February in the championship. So
Okay.
I think he ended up scoring 11 goals and quite a few assists this season, you know, in 30-something games. So, you know, I seen some of his highlights. It could be a good player, you know,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't sit there and on the basis of what he did against a Zimbabwe team, that knows if they even had their full team or whatever, you know, and the fact that Zimbabwe were in Nigeria's World Cup qualification group, and Nigeria could not beat them one time. In fact, the reason why we're not in the World Cup is the second match in Uyo, when we allowed Zimbabwe to equalize in the last minute. That pretty much is the difference between Nigeria qualifying for the World Cup and not. So there's a little bit of trauma seeing Zimbabwe trot out there to face Nigeria, but beat them routinely, and you wonder, why couldn't we do any of this during the World Cup qualification? But anyways, given MPFL players, because a lot of times you hear a lot of clamor for these MPFL players to come out and play for the Super Eagles main team, and you're looking at these if you watch the Nigerian Football League, any highlights or games, you're like, these guys don't really have that much to offer. And even if you think they have much to offer from watching them play against competition as level as to them in the league, when they step into the continent in the continental club championships, they pretty much get waxed. They don't, and it's not like they're getting waxed by the Esperances and Al Ahlis and the top teams in Africa from Egypt, Tunisia, and Morocco. No, they usually get beat by teams that aren't even from countries that we shouldn't be scared to play, like from Guinea, from anywhere else, Congo. Well, Congo's bottom line is this. And the MPFL players have not shown that they deserve to be talked about. And there's always clamor for them. So now here's a chance for these MPFL players to come out and actually play and get into camp with Coach Shell. So that's a positive. I like it.
No, it's good. It was good to see a lot of those guys, and I'm happy they went in this time. Apart from the likes of a Terran Murphy or what's the name of that defensive mid that scored the final goal against Jamaica?
Are you talking about Yusuf?
Yusuf, yeah.
He had a brace. He scored the first and last goal.
Yeah.
Alassane Yusuf. He plays, here in the United States. I think it's New England Revolution that he plays with.
Yeah. So,
he's a friend too.
Yeah. It increases the depth. It increases the scope of the other players. There are a lot of new players that he brought in. So that's good.
I think from that team that played the 2 games against Zimbabwe and Jamaica, I can actually see about 6 players, actually more than that. Let's look at it from the goalkeeping perspective. Arthur Okonkwo, right now with Nwabali not really having a club side, we don't know what his future is. So we're left with Okoye and Udinese, which you would say is a de facto number 1. Although I don't think anybody really has the fullest confidence in him in the Super Eagles yet, even though he keeps for a Serie A team and is a starter and does very well in that league. And then now you've just gotten Arthur Okonkwo. I think he played for Wrexham, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He committed his future to Nigeria, so that was his first time playing. Could say 2 clean sheets, whatever it's worth. Wasn't really bothered much. Maybe 1 or 2 good saves against Zimbabwe. Then in the defensive line, again, those 2 guys, Nwaiwu and Ogbu, I feel like those guys are possibly going to be, I think you're on mute, possibly going to be there. Also, midfield, you could have a guy like Yusuf. He's definitely a backup guy, a depth guy. Tamsin Tijani, I think he was captain of the under 20. You're on mute. I don't know if you're trying to talk, but in any case, and then now Femi Aziz. And so I'll say from every department, from goalkeeper 1 and maybe about 6 or 7 players that could add squad depth. There's nothing wrong with that. And these are young guys too. There's not like these squad depth guys are guys in their late 20s and early 30s. At least the football age says that they're 25 and under. So that's good.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. It's good to watch. I wanted to get your take on that. So I think moving into the UEFA Champions League final, Ousmane Dembele, man, what a player! Yeah,
well, I didn't think it was a standout yesterday, though, Shah. But throughout the season, in fact, if we want to, instead of talking about Ousmane Dembele, in my opinion, we should be talking about PSG. And if I'm going to talk about PSG, then I'm actually going to talk about it's a lot of things to talk about. So right now, obviously, the preeminent force in Europe when it comes to club football. But they have, I don't want to say this because I don't want to slight them to a certain extent. But if you look at the way things worked out for them, some of it is planning on their part this particular season. Others is also the French league working in cahoots with them. So you can remember they played in the Club World Cup in the summer last year. And I've been monitoring that the whole season. Teams that played in the Club World Cup, players that played, especially the ones that played longer into the tournament, how did they end up doing in their respective leagues? I think if you look at a team like Chelsea, and especially a guy like Cole Palmer, one would have to say that affected him tremendously. From him getting injured early in the season and then just never really, ever really getting fully healthy and just never looking like himself. I think that was a big effect. and especially playing in the English league, which is very draining and rigorous. Now you circle back to a PSG or a Bayern Munich. Both those teams pretty much are one-team leagues. Like when the league season begins, you're asking when will they clinch? Not if they clinch.
Yeah.
You know? And when you look at that, in fact, they were showing something where a guy like Declan Rice had played 1,000 more minutes than a guy like Vitinha or Gerard Neves for PSG. All through the season, PSG had the luxury of resting their guys all through the season, and asking the league to postpone matches ahead of Champions League games, so they'll have the weekend off. You know, they got a little bit of pressure in the league from Lens this season, because typically no one even challenges PSG. They usually win the league running away with 4 or 5 weeks to spare sometimes. So this actually went down to the penultimate weekend where they were getting challenged by Lens. So I think they finished first. Lens finished second. They finished with 76 points. Lens finished with 70 points. Although, like I said, it came down to the second to last week before the title was actually clinched. But here's the interesting thing about PSG. Not one of their players is in the top 5 in goal scorers. And I'll give you the numbers for goal scorers in the French league. The top scorer scored 21 goals. And then there were 4 guys that scored like 16 and then 13. Not one of them. I think the leading scorer for PSG had like either 12 or 13 goals or something like that. Dembele only had 10 goals, league goals in Ligue 1. Why was that? Not because they weren't good, but because they had the ability to rest a bunch of their guys. They were resting guys. Dembele got injured a couple of times during the season. They rested him, had the luxury of letting him come back to full fitness before playing him again. So PSG, by virtue of the league they play in, have this ability to peak at the right time. And they can just sort of slow play it, while a lot of the other, like if you look at the English Premier League, there's no option to do that. No. It's pretty much go all day. And if you look at Arsenal, and I'm not going to say that's the reason Arsenal lost, because I think Arsenal were their own worst enemies, if you ask me. But they didn't have that luxury. You know, they really didn't have that luxury. They had to go full bore, because one slip up and Man City was right there to take the league, even though I think at the top of the league this year in the Premier League, the teams just weren't of the highest quality.
No, it was, which is good for the league, because people will argue, okay, the parity has increased. Teams are competing a lot better. It's not the usual top 4 that you're seeing. A couple of these teams are getting beaten, and things are changing. So they would say that's a good thing from that standpoint. But you're right though. It's more rigorous in the EPL, and then when they have to play in Europe, it makes it a little bit more difficult coming into those top tournaments. I mean, Bukayo Saka was injured, I think, 2 different times this season. So, in that game, he wasn't himself. I wonder how much of the upcoming World Cup, being a World Cup year, also factored into that game. Because I watched the game and I thought, while I was watching, I was like, I've seen Champions League finals that have been way more competitive, more intense. Like, this was good, but it didn't have that same. It almost seemed like guys were holding back a little bit,
I don't think the World Cup had anything to do with that personally. I mean, I might be wrong, but in my opinion, I don't think it was the World Cup. I think it was just Arsenal's setup. So Arsenal, the thing about Arsenal is that team is good enough to be expansive, but they choose not to be. So they choose to have defense as their, modus operandi, and sit back and muddy up the game. So, in fact, I knew once the final was going to be between Arsenal and PSG, especially having watched that PSG Bayern semifinals, right? Where it was just wide open in the first leg. Yeah. I knew and everyone kept saying, oh, PSG is going to beat Arsenal by 2. And I was like, no. Arsenal are going to control the game. That's the thing they're really good at. The problem is, my prediction was Arsenal would need to score more than 1 goal to win. Because as good defensively as they were, I never really believed that it could keep PSG from scoring. It was never going to be 1-0 to the Arsenal, which meant to win in normal time or regulation time, you have to score at least 2, because PSG would score 1. And if it ended up then my prediction was 1-1 in penalties, and that's exactly what it was. Right. And to a friend of mine, I was like, this is Arsenal's best chance of winning this is 1-1 in penalties, which unfortunately for them, it didn't work out. But I think the better team won. But I also think that because they muddied it up, in fact, the worst thing that could have happened to that Champions League was Arsenal scoring early.
Yeah.
Because once they scored early, I don't know why on earth they believed they could defend for 90 minutes because they scored in the 6 minutes. So basically, it's going to be 90 minutes of defending with injury time or added time and all that. It was not going to be possible. There was no way you could keep PSG from scoring. And also PSG, they did something very tactical. And they started this in the Bayern second leg, where they also showed they have the ability to muddy it up. Because what was Arsenal's game plan? Counterattack. We'll just counterattack you 1 or 2, get those goals, and set up and close up shop. PSG then allowed them to counterattack. So this is the reason why that game ended up being as boring as it was. Is because while PSG was experienced enough to know that they'll get their chance, and there's no need to, with 90 minutes to go to try to score 1 goal, there's no need for them to open themselves up. So if you notice when they were attacking, they still kept like every time Arsenal kicked the ball, because that was their strategy, they get the ball in defense and just boot it up. There was like 3 or 4 PSG guys surrounding 1 Arsenal striker. So you would think with only 1 striker, maybe you only leave 2 back there so we can add numbers and attack. But PSG was not opening themselves up. So they played it perfectly and understood with their experience that we were going to get our 1 chance to equalize and perhaps even get the chance to win it, which they did. They just never converted. So, yeah.
And Arsenal didn't create a lot of chances. You know, if you look at it, I mean, that first goal, you know, they flicked it over. Good break. Beautiful finish, right? They scored, and they just kind of said, all right, we're going to defend this goal. We're going to play smart. And, I mean, they held on to the second half. PSG came back, got the penalty. Dembele steps up, buries it beautifully.
Yeah,
and,
you can't defend against a good team for 90 minutes, man. Especially if you're letting the team come at you with players of the caliber of PSG, which, quite frankly, we're not at the very best yesterday. But it doesn't matter. Quality, man, they're gonna score. It's just a matter. And in fact, not only they score as in the most predictable of fashions. Something is good. You keep allowing the ball to come into your box. Something bad is going to happen for you. Either somebody's going to have their hands out and the ball hits it, and now you're leaving it up to VAR to tell whether it's a penalty or not, or you're going to make a mistake that leads to a penalty.
What do you think happens to Arsenal next year in EPL?
That's a good question.
Can they? I mean, the guys are young, good. Can they sustain this? You know,
The thing that's annoying to a lot of people that observe is that it feels like Arsenal have the squad to be expansive. They have the players to be expansive right now. Yes, they might need to get 1 or 2 more technical players on the wings. That left wing seems bare. There's no way you can decide that you want to win Europe with Martinelli and Trossard as your left wingers. Perhaps, I know a lot of people have been talking about getting Kvicha Kvaratskhelia or somebody of that nature to come in and be on the league, because the left wing is dead, basically, right? There's nothing. Maybe get rid of 1 of the 2 center forwards they have and get you a real center forward that can actually get the, again, how would it have been nice to have a guy like Victor Osimhen as their center forward? But let's leave that alone instead of or even somebody else a little more expensive, because it just seems like, again, it's the first season, so I don't want to really be too harsh and Gyökeres. But it doesn't seem like when you watch Arsenal this season, they weren't playing for Gyökeres. He seemed just odd. And then even yesterday when he came in, the simple task of holding onto the ball, he couldn't really do. So
I'm not high on him, man. I mean,
one season, I would say we should give him a chance to, because coming to the EPL, man. You can't just expect a player to just come in from a league like Portugal or from the Championship to Portugal to the EPL and just light it up. He had good numbers, I mean, he scored like 14 or 15 league goals this year. Not bad.
Not bad, yeah.
For the first year, he was the leading scorer. He scored over 20-something goals for the entire season, both Champions League and FA Cup and whatnot. So again, but does he look like the guy?
The eye
Doesn't
test,
really
no.
feel like it.
Yeah, when he doesn't pass the eye test. But and again, look at the players he's playing with. That also plays a big factor in this, in that he plays with some really, really good, skillful players around him. That always helps with guys in terms of how they end up performing, but still can't take anything away from him. I mean, he put the ball in behind the net on a number of different occasions. So it's all right. We'll see. We'll see how they do. Arsenal's curse.
Arteta has to allow them to play. I think the right now what we see is that Arteta coach is too scared, and until I get it. They finished second so many times, playing a little bit more expensive football, and he wanted to get over the line. So the idea is that now that they've gotten over the line in the EPL, that maybe the handbrake would be loosened now. And I hope so too.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The thing with Arsenal is they've always been, the reason why this was such a big deal for them is because they'd always gotten close, and everyone has always been like, just give Arsenal some time. They'll fall on their own sword. Yeah. And they always did. They always
almost did this time.
Yeah, they almost did, right? So, kudos to them. They won. All my friends that are Arsenal fans are probably hating on me right now but I didn't think they were going to do the double though.
Well, they had a chance. The saying is you have to be in it to win it. So they were certainly in it. And to lose on penalties, it's a toss-up. But the one guy I would say that's kind of been a disappointment to me, I thought he was going to be much better, is Eberechi Eze. Something just didn't click this season there. I know he had that one game where he scored a hat-trick against the Spurs, but that was before we really knew how bad the Spurs were, Tottenham. But pretty much all season, I think he scored spectacular goals, but he's been very inconsistent all year. And he had his chance because Martin Odegaard was injured for a lot of the season, and so Eze had to step in. But he just didn't. To me, it didn't convince me that he's ready for that level yet to be at that level. I think at Crystal Palace he was just a baller, him and Michael Olise. But you see how Michael Olise went to Germany, and he's in a conversation for Ballon d'Or now. And Eze didn't really step it up.
No, absolutely. I think that's good. So we got a World Cup coming up.
That we do.
We do have a World Cup coming up. Africa has 10 teams.
10 representatives. Isn't that just a shame just to say that? For those who don't understand what we mean by that, I think you should understand that we're saying Nigeria is not there out of 10.
We're not. We came close. We even came close through the FIFA court system.
That was a disgrace. It's just disgrace everywhere.
Yeah, but what do you think about that whole thing that went to FIFA? And
it never went to FIFA. That's what it really came down to, because it turns out that FIFA, and there was no case because the NFF didn't even pay the administrative fee that you're supposed to pay. They didn't file the procedural thing in the right time, in the time limit that you're supposed to file it, and they didn't pay the fee. So
wait, is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened.
No, I thought it just got shut down because they didn't have a good case.
There was nothing to shut down. There was no case. So the NFF was just sitting there like dragging us and playing the people's minds to give people hope for something. It's just normal behavior of this NFF, not this, just the NFF, the incompetence that we see, and just basically the just total lack of respect that they show to the general populace. They treat the populace like the populace are a bunch of idiots. It's sad. It's very annoying, but there's nothing anyone's going to do about it. That's the part of it. Because now the elections are coming up pretty soon again, and it's the same idiots that they're going to put out in front of us, because we all know how things work. It's just money, not the best interest of football. Because quite frankly, these guys should be nowhere near our football. Any news that comes out of that camp is always negative, baffling news, always.
The one thing they did get right was hiring Eric Shell, though.
But even that, they're not getting it right. Boomer, Eric Shell's contract expires in January of next year. There's an AFCON in the summer. Right now, we should be talking about we have extended him. Rather,
I thought they did. I thought they extended his contract.
Not extend him. Rather, what we're talking about here, he signed a 4-year contract or something like that when he first signed. Rather, what we're talking about is when he talked about his demand for a contract extension, he leaked the demands. And here's the thing that made it look so bad. The demands were like standard demands, right? A staff car, having access to electricity in his office, able to move around, money for his staff.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. And yet they leaked it trying to make him look bad. And so it's what's going to happen is Eric Shell, who has the leverage here? NFF or Eric Shell?
Eric Shell, 100%.
Eric Shell's stock has gone tremendously up from how he's transformed the Super Eagles from even getting them to the playoffs because we were dead and buried. He did a miracle to even get us to be in the World Cup playoffs. And then after the disappointment of not being able to qualify, to pick themselves up and look the way they looked as the best watchable team at AFCON. If not for the fact that they were unfortunate to play against Morocco in the semifinals, perhaps they'll be in the finals. Perhaps we're talking about a team that could win it. I don't think by any means that Senegal or Morocco, they probably deserve to be finalists, and Nigeria was where they were deservedly. But in terms of watchability, by far the most enjoyable team to watch in that AFCON were the Super Eagles, right? Yeah. So his stock has risen. And it was even tied to jobs in the French league and I think Marseille or something like that. I'm just biding my time if I were him. I have a contract with the NFF. January 2027, you don't want to pay me? There'll be teams lining up to pay that man.
Yeah. I heard Tunisia offered him a deal. Yeah. So and no one could get mad at him for deciding to go, especially if they haven't read up that contract at this point, which is crazy. Because right now they just won the Unity Cup again. They have a bunch of friendly matches scheduled. I think they're playing Portugal. They're playing Poland. He's going to go into those games. Depending on who plays, I think we're going to look good. I don't know whether we'll win, but
Osimhen is not playing. Neither is Lukman.
Yeah, but that's good.
And somebody else.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I think it's good that they're not playing, so we could build up a new crop of players to rely on. But the NFF needs to do the right thing here. If they lose that guy, I promise you, to be fire on the mountain.
Do you remember when Nigeria was playing the playoff qualification game against Ghana for the 2022 World Cup? And I told you that we weren't going to qualify. Actually, I predicted we weren't going to qualify even before the playoffs.
Yeah. I'm
going to tell you right now, and this is another prediction. Eric Shell is going to leave. He's going to leave. Based on what's going on, professionally speaking, he's come to Nigeria and done what he wanted to do for his resume and CV, and there's no loyalty to Nigeria. And if the NFF are going to act like the way they've acted, why would he stay? He's not Nigerian. So if he were Nigerian, you can tug on his coat and say, hey, be loyal to your fatherland or motherland or whatever, but that's not the case. His loyalty is to money. None of his assistants are Nigerians. There's nothing there that makes me believe that Eric Shell is going to stay. Maybe because at this point, I know there is the possibility, but you were talking about him. Do you really see Eric Shell being the coach of Nigeria at the 2030 World Cup 4 years from now? Just be honest. Do you see that? I don't, because of all the administrative snafus.
Not with this federation. I mean, because I don't know what it is. It's just like they just don't know how to do the right thing, right? You have someone that has this level of success, unheard of. The way they're playing, typically the criticism has been, with Ghana Raw was they were winning games, but no one liked how they were playing. They were a little too defensive. It was this, it was that. These guys have looked amazing. And to see all that, know their team's coming after them. Because if we know it, NFF definitely knows it.
Yeah.
And
do they know? I can't even give him that much credit, man. Those guys are so incompetent, Omar. They're so incompetent. they have this arrogance about them that is so annoying. And, just they're all in it for their pockets. That's what it is. Because, when the next elections come in, the word that goes, I think you sent me that video on how they got elected. Again, not like it was surprising. We did a video, a podcast right before the elections, and we predicted we made the mistake of looking at the merit of the candidates. When we should have been looking at which one has the most money to bribe people. And that's really what it came down to. I think at that time, we all, the gentleman that was there talking to us that day, who's an insider, was letting them know how like Gusau is somebody that is empty, has nothing to offer, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing. But he's the guy that Pinnock installed, and we're reaping the benefits of that BS. And that's what's going to happen again. They're just going to give money. The problem is the way we elect, right? We're allowing these state FA chairmen, who most of the time they're appointed by the state governments, to be the ones that have the votes, majority of the votes. We don't have journalists. We don't have any other group of people that have the majority. The majority of vote is from the FA chairman from the states, and those are all political appointees. Right. So, just like the gentleman in that one video you sent me was saying, your football is a reflection of your society. Why would you expect the football to be any different than the society at large? Look how we elect our political leaders. We elect the biggest agberos, and they're the ones that are local government chairman. Yeah, right. They don't have anything to offer for the most part. We elect people. The guy said something that really, I shook my head. He said, how can we as a nation allow people to put into law that if you have committed fraud, you're not barred from contesting for political office? And we look at it and say it's okay. And what they say, c'est fini, as the French will say. It's done. At that point, it's over. There's nothing we can argue. Anyway, let's move on to other things, man.
Yeah, let's talk about the World Cup. So, who are your teams?
Look, I want
to highlight the top five.
Top five is very easy to look at, man. I think the top five, you ask 10 people, at least 8 or 9 people will have the same top 5 team, maybe not in the same order. So we're looking at France, Spain, Portugal, England, maybe. I don't even know who else.
Brazil.
I'm reluctant to add Brazil. I think we say Brazil just because of the name. I have no faith in Brazil whatsoever to do anything at this World Cup. I don't believe. I don't even. Brazil will get to the quarterfinal on the strength of being Brazil, but I guess I can say they're a top 8 team in the world. They are Brazil after all, but team-wise, this is not a team that is convincing. In fact,
why do you say that,
though? They're very unbalanced. Right? They don't have the midfielders are not creative midfielders. They're workman-like midfielders. Maybe in today's football, maybe that's what works. But you need that spark in midfield. If you look at any team that's ever won the World Cup, you have one guy in midfield that can rise above the tempo, right? And make a play out of nothing, make a pass out of nothing, take the ball by the scruff of the game by the scruff of the neck, and drive into that opponent's box and either give an assist or score the goal. And Brazil doesn't have that. If you look at the guys they have, the guys are relying on Casemiro. We love him, for his professionalism, but he's not that guy. In fact, Casemiro, you have to manage him through the tournament if you want to go far. You're not going to play him every single day because he's old. It's just what it is. Pauline. There's who else? They don't have anybody in that midfield that scares anybody. And then if you look at the forward lineup, they're unbalanced, right? Who is their center forward? Not really anybody. Vinicius, I think he's of world-class capability, but I don't think he's a leader that can lead your team, right? And on the right side, who do they have? They actually have a problem because a guy like Estevao, who they were going to have in there, is injured. So, in fact, that's probably the only reason why Neymar was able to make this team, right? And ahead of Joao Pedro. Well, if you had asked me, I would have taken Joao Pedro instead of Neymar. Because Neymar's injured. And I guarantee you, if Neymar were to play, he'll play 2 or 3 games at the most and he'll get injured again because that's what he's been doing. Even when Neymar was super fit in his prime of his career, that's exactly what always happened. He always got injured. Have you remembered any World Cup where Neymar didn't get injured?
No.
Think about it. He never finishes the World Cup. So, yeah, they're not the team that I'm like looking at and saying, even their goalkeepers are a little bit older now. They're not quite as on top of their game. And on top of all that, all through qualification, they never really impress. They basically scrape through the qualifier. That's not to say that it can't be better than that, but based on the form that they've shown over the last couple of years and months, that's not the team I'm looking at. I begrudgingly would put them as number 5 on the list because, quite frankly, there's nobody else. Except if I put a team like Senegal in there. I feel like Senegal is my dark horse to do well. But, for those kind of countries, the dark horse to do are, what is it really, quarterfinals, maybe semifinals. But it's going to be tougher to make it to the semifinals this time now because there's one extra game that you have to play that round of 32. Is it round of 32, round of 16? Around a 32 game, man. That's an extra knockout game. So that throws up a lot of variables, man.
Senegal has a good team, though. They're very well balanced. When the big games show up, they show up. That's the thing about them that I like. And Mane, they have leadership with Sadio Mane that they all listen to. So I think that's what makes them strong. They're a team. They are a team. They're a team. And then I'll be watching them. Be exciting to watch them. I still don't know how Ghana qualified. Don't ask me because they're terrible.
Because they were in a group with Madagascar and they basically handled business like they were supposed to. They were in a group in Madagascar and they were in a group in Mali. And Mali finished 3rd in that group. So if Madagascar and Mali are the 2 teams I'm highlighting in that group, you can imagine who else was in it. So they had a bunch of games that you should win. Yeah. They did what they're supposed to. Look, I'm not going to begrudge all these. This qualification series was set up for all the top teams in Africa to qualify. If you were medal, you're supposed to qualify. Just like a couple of years ago, I was telling you how the AFCON is a little diluted AFCON qualification because everybody good should be making it to AFCON now if you're any pedigree at all. Because with 32, I think they've expanded it to 32 teams now. Everybody should qualify. Mike, why do we have qualifications anymore? Anyways. The thing about Senegal, though, another team that is like a dark horse, because I think it's easier to talk. It's better to talk about the dark horses than the favorites, because everyone knows who the favorites are. It's always teams that won the World Cup before, right?
Yeah.
Norway. Actually the 2 Scandinavian teams. You want to call them that? Sweden and Norway. Norway, just because of their offensive threat with Erling Haaland, some of those guys that played for Bodo Glimt in the Champions League.
They were good.
Yeah,
they're good, man.
They're the ones that put Italy out of there, make Italy.
Yeah.
Wow. They didn't give Italy a chance. They beat them home and away. So, not saying Italy is this top team, but with Erling Haaland in his first major tournament, the world is ready to see him. And Sweden also. And it turns out that actually, when I was looking at the groups, I picked out 3 groups that were tough groups. Because again, now with 48, this World Cup is a little diluted. So, in fact, this is the first World Cup where I'm like, wait and see approach to see how it's going to be, because there's going to be a lot of games that I don't want to see. I didn't even realize it, but there's a Curacao is in the World Cup, man. Curacao. There's going to be a match between.
You mean Curacao?
You see, I don't even know how to pronounce it. I apologize to any Curaçaoans, because I'm pretty sure there's some of them out there who will watch this and say some bad things about me. It's ignorance, okay? And I apologize. But Curacao. So they're in the same group as Germany, Ivory Coast, Ecuador.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me that you will buy tickets to the Ecuador-Curacao match if it was playing in your backyard? I wouldn't, right? Maybe Cote d'Ivoire just because it's Ivorians, but I wouldn't want to watch. But anyways, 3 groups that I looked at and were sort of like the standout groups in this World Cup. Maybe even 4, but 3 that maybe I look at all 4 teams and say, this is good. Turkey, USA, Paraguay, Australia.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a tough group. And when I looked at that group, I picked Turkey and USA to finish in the top 2 and Paraguay to finish 3rd, with Australia picking up the rear. So as I don't know if everyone knows, there are 12 groups in this World Cup, and obviously the top 2 teams qualify for the round of 32, and then the 8 best 3rd place teams will make it into that round of 32. So it's kind of hard to place teams in a bracket because you just don't know who's going to be picked out of the 12. So I did go through a whole thing of saying this is going to be my top 3 in each group, but then just highlight these 3 groups. Sweden, Group F, Sweden, Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia. Yeah, that's a tough group too. Where
Tunisia didn't show us much in AFCON though. They were not.
Yeah, they may not show you much, but they're representative. They're better than Curacao.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, okay. In that group, I picked Sweden to be first over Netherlands. Could be a good switch. And then Japan to be third over Tunisia being fourth. So that's how I picked it. The problem with Japan is they're always good, but once they get into that next level, the physicality sort of gets diminished, and teams with greater physicality tend to, overpower them a little bit. And then finally, the group, we just talked about some teams in this group. France, Senegal, Norway, and Iraq.
That's a tough group, bro.
Yes, even the Iraqis are not to be messed with. I watched them in the playoff when they played against, I think it was Bolivia. They played against in the World Cup playoff. It was the last playoff match. They were the last team to qualify. They're decent, I think they'll finish last in that group. I picked France to be first, Senegal to be second, and Norway third in that group. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if that order is reversed.
It switches, right?
In any order.
Senegal needs to work on their defense. I saw their friendly match today against the United States. It was a 3-2 game. They need to work on keeping goals out because typically that game against France would be a good game to watch. But if they can't stop the French from scoring, that's going to be a problem. If they could tighten up that defense a little bit, I think they could match the French up front because Senegal have good players, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, so one thing, I watched some of that match too. I saw all the first half and some of the second half. So I think I saw up to the point where it was 2-1 when Mane scored. But you got to take that with a grain of salt because Senegal pretty much started most of their B team from the goalie. I think only Mane and maybe Nicolas Jackson, who is not even guaranteed to be a starter. I think they only had like 2 or 3 bona fide starters in that team.
That old boy that plays for Everton. What's his name?
It's Iliman Ndiaye. I think he should be a starter. He'll be a starter.
He's good. I like him.
He's really good. I like him too. Yeah, so I think that France-Senegal game is actually the first game of the group stages, which is a cracker to start.
That's going to be a good game.
Yeah. I mean, if you harken back to 2002 when Senegal's very first World Cup game was against France and
El Hadji
Diop scored that goal with that little dance. I remember that, man. Well, of course. Yeah, so they beat France back then, they have this whole thing. Obviously, when the Francophone countries play against France, it's something else. They have something extra. And so, if we look at it's funny you were mentioning the favorites, right? So even if we look at the favorites of the competition, with all of them, none of them are like they all have flaws. We look at France and we're like, ooh, that top 3: Mbappe, Doué, Olise. And Dembele, in fact, you start naming the guys that come off the bench and you're just like, ooh, but their midfield is porous.
It is.
Midfield is not who their midfield is. You don't the guy they're relying on is a 20-year-old Zaire Emery. He didn't even start for PSG. He came in and got like 20 minutes, whatever number of minutes yesterday in the Champions League final. So the midfield is a little bit weaker, and Camavinga is not going. I think Tchouameni is there. But Tchouameni is not, he had a good season with Real Madrid this year.
He did.
Him, Valverde, I'll say were 2 players that actually look good in Real Madrid this season. But then if you look at that, the defenders, Konate, did Konate even get picked? I'm not even sure.
I'm not sure. I got to check. But I'm sure he got picked. There's no way they don't pick him.
Well, I don't know if you're saying there's no, that says everything. The defense is not that good.
Yeah.
In French. So the French in a tournament, you're not going to outscore everybody every time. And in a knockout game, when you get into the round of 16 quarterfinals, you can see 2 goals just because of one lucky bounce. All of a sudden you're chasing the game.
Yeah.
Argentina, they're old. England, my issue with England is that one, the heat. I think it's going to bother him a lot because it's going to be hot here in the summer. And also, it's England. England they don't carry Kane.
The thing about England is they if you watch EPL religiously, right? You know all their players. You see them score goals. You see them do all these things in EPL. But then when it comes to the national team, and you're watching them, it's like you're watching different players. the exception would be people like Bukayo Saka, right? From what he did last World Cup. That was his first World Cup, and he went in on fire, right? But you watch him, and you're like, these guys don't look the same, you know?
I think they get tired, man. I think by the time they get to tournaments, they get tired. Again, we were talking about this. Arsenal played 60-something games this season, you know? So you got team, although Man U only played 40. But regardless of how many players are man, and then you look at the performance. Well, they're playing with players from other countries that are exceptional. So it's not just like fully stacked English teams in the Premier League. Teams, yeah. So you're looking at, I'm playing with Bruno Fernandes. I'm going to look good playing with Bruno Fernandes, right? Or I'm playing with Ryan Cherky, and he's coming off the bench for France, right? I'm playing with Ryan Cherky. I'm going to look good, but you look at guys like. And they didn't even pick some of the guys. Like Phil Foden is not going to the World Cup. He doesn't deserve to. Cole Palmer, obviously, he doesn't deserve to go to the World Cup. But you look at their offensive, the number 9 line. Watkins has had a good end to the season, but he wasn't doing nothing earlier. And then they picked the other guy that plays in Saudi Arabia. That used to play for Brentford.
The black dude, the black Jamaican guy.
Right? Yeah. I can't remember his name.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
man.
but
good player.
He's played 7 minutes for England under Tuchel. So the team, I think Tuchel's bringing workman-like players for a tournament, which I actually thought that he has a good squad pick. The only thing I would say is if you gave me the choice between John Stones and Harry Maguire, I would pick Maguire just because Stones gets injured all the time, not because I think Maguire is just better. But at the end of the day, the players that he didn't pick, maybe Morgan Gibbs-White, but the players that he didn't pick, I can't say, because you didn't pick this player, that's the difference between you winning the World Cup and you not winning it. So it's not like there's anybody. So I don't look at England and see a team that's going to cause it. I think the Heat's going to be oppressive for them. And I think they'll wilt. If they make it to the quarterfinals, if they make it to semifinals, that's a great World Cup for them. But I don't see them doing that.
I have to agree. It would surprise me if England even makes it to the semifinals, to be honest with you.
And then Spain, they've been probably the best performing team over the last, I'll say, 4 or 5 years. In terms of watchability, and they won Euros and then finished second in the Nations League a couple last year. And obviously, we're talking about a Yamal. Inaki Williams' younger brother, Nico Williams on the left side, and a Pedri in the midfield. But now we're talking midfield. Their midfield is good. But here's the problem. Right now, as we speak, Yamal's injured, right? Coming back from a hamstring. Pedri is going to get injured. That's what he's shown, And Nico Williams, he's injured, recovering from a hamstring. So 3 of your best players are starting to, 2 of them are injured already, rehab, and we know Yamal is going to miss the first game, and probably Nico Williams too. And the third guy, who is the metronome, who if he's on, he can dominate the World Cup because that's how good he is, Pedri. I don't know if you've been watching Barcelona all season.
Yeah, I did.
But the guy always gets injured. It's almost guaranteed that after about 4 or 5 games, he's going to get injured in the league, So that's my concern with them. If not, I think that squad is really good. Really good. I don't think the heat would be as damaging for them because I think parts of Spain does get a little warmer.
Yeah.
And then what was the other? So we talked about it. Portugal. Portugal. And I think the coach said something that I actually go with. He said, you can call us one of the teams to look at, but you can't call us favorites because we've never won it before. And actually, I tend to agree with that. And if you look at Portugal, they're a very smart country, man. They punch above their weight, or at least expectations are above their weight. And if you're going to rely on a 40-something-year-old as your center forward, probably not it, man. And the problem is I don't know anyone behind Ronaldo that striking fear. They don't have any other center forward. I think Gonzalo Ramos or whatever his name is plays for PSG.
Yeah.
Not really doing anything. He had that one moment where it looked like he was going to be good, but he's flamed out. So Portugal, I see like they don't have any real center forward options. And Ronaldo, as great as he once was, he's not scary.
Yeah, he's not the same. As games wear on, they have to manage him too, because keep in mind you're playing that many games in a short time. He's not going to see full 90 minutes. There's no way. He's going to have to be managed properly to be able to function. It'll be an interesting World Cup, man.
Portugal's midfield is really good. Obviously with Vitinha and Neves and Bruno Fernandes. That's like, okay, so that's a go-getter midfield. But the wings, who are they? Rafael Leao?
He's good. The thing with him is he's just
inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I
can't undisciplined. He's very undisciplined.
Consistently inconsistent. Right. So that's the thing. Even within a game, he might show you one moment of brilliance and then can't even complete the next pass. So I can't rely on a guy like that.
It's going to be a good tournament. I think. No, I agree with you on a lot of those teams you've broken down. I think the Brazil piece. The thing with Brazil is sometimes when you count them out, like when they in 2014 when they got destroyed by Germany at home. A lot of people had them as, one of the main teams until that happened, right? So the thing with Brazil is you look at them, you look at all their players, you're like, these guys are good, but not compared to other Brazilian teams we've seen in the past. Nowhere close, right? But we'll see. I mean, we'll see exactly what they. I didn't agree with Neymar being put on the squad though, just off the top. But I think. They'll play the games. I think Brazil plays Morocco.
Yeah, their first match is against Morocco, actually. So they're in a group with Morocco, Scotland, and Haiti.
How are we not in this World Cup, bro? That's the thing that kills me.
Wondering, I picked them to be last in their group, just like I picked South Africa. The teams that I picked to be last are South Africa in Group A, Qatar in Group B, Haiti in Group C. Australia in a tough group, I picked them last. That could easily be anybody else in that group with the USA and Paraguay and Turkey. Curacao, which they should just be happy to be there. They played a friendly against Scotland yesterday and they got destroyed.
I'm not a hater, but let's talk about South Africa.
Yeah, the South Africans haven't had a very good build up to the World Cup at all. From friendly matches, but not even a build up. If you just look at it, like South Africa, They are where they've always they can't score goals, right? I think South Africans suffer from the simple fact, and this is a tired narrative, but most of their players play in the South African league, which
their coach was even complaining about that recently, right?
In Africa, the South African league is not a bad league, but it's not a if that's where all your players are coming from, bar one or two, then that's not the model for success, and you see it. And when you play against the big boys in AFCON, right? Yeah. You see the physicality difference, right? And the South Africans, they play good technical football. They can tap it around, but they just can't put the ball in the net. Yeah. So that's one of their problems. I think they just played a friendly. I forget who they played. Might have been Jordan or somebody like that just a couple of days ago, and it ended up 0-0, where they had a lot of possession, couldn't and no cutting edge. So I think that's going to hurt them. And obviously, by the time you start playing against, they're in a group that's actually not that bad. Mexico, South Korea, and Czechia. Czechia is what they call themselves now. So
that's not an easy group, bro. I mean, because Mexico is going to play them at home.
But let me ask you something.
Yeah.
South Africa qualified ahead of Nigeria, right? So I can replace either South Africa or Congo. If Nigeria were in this group, how would you feel about our chances of qualifying from this group? With Mexico, South Korea, and Czechia.
I'll be confident.
Super confident. Now, what about Congo? If it was Portugal, Colombia, Uzbekistan?
I would be confident looking at that Colombia game. The Colombia game for us in that group will be the key, right? But
at worst, we'll finish third, and we might be amongst the best placed third teams. But in the group with Mexico, South Korea, Czechia, South Africa, I'm going for number one spot. And I might give Mexico an edge because they're at home, but I'm not really conceding that. I'm thinking we're not going to lose to them. We might draw with them. I'm thinking we should beat South Korea. I'm thinking we should beat Czechia.
Yeah, we'll beat Czech Republic.
Yeah, and qualify comfortably. Not like, of course, with Nigeria, we always find a way to bungle things. But in reality, when you look at that group, but South Africa, I'm looking at them. So what I'm saying is that group is not a tough group in particular, right? The group Congo was in, a little tougher. Maybe Uzbekistan is a whipping boy, but Uzbekistan, don't sleep on those guys. They won.
I've never seen them play. I have no idea.
Uzbekistan won the Under-20 World Cup in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, around that year. And that's where a guy like Kuzmanov is playing for Manchester City. They have a guy playing for Man City, for God's sake. So at least that should tell you something. And they have a couple of guys playing around. They're going to get whooped, obviously. But by the time you finish playing them, you're going to know you played somebody. This is not.
Listen, keep in mind, Congo have their Lumumba mascot, right? So
I don't think he got a visa to America, man. I think I heard a story where
the federation stepped in.
If they did, then that's different.
They did, I read a story where the federation stepped in. I think he got denied, but the federation stepped in and said, no, this guy is with our entourage, right? That's part of the government. So now he's going.
Okay, because I think the reason he wasn't able to go is the guarantee of amount of funds you have to have in your bank account.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, which is
World Cup. So let's talk about that for a second because we're kind of running out of time. But I think there've been that issue, with the commander in chief in your country, making it difficult for a lot of these people to travel over, right? What do you make of that? Because a lot of these teams that we just talked about, a lot of their citizens are not going to get visas. They're not going to be allowed into the United States. They may be allowed into Canada, maybe Mexico. Like so if you're in Mexico's group and you're playing all your games in Mexico, then you're more likely to your fans have a chance to be there. Yeah. But most of the games are being played in the United States. Right.
Yeah, it is an issue. It is a bit of an issue. So it's not just an issue from the standpoint of fans want to come watch the game, but there's even a commerce issue in the cities that are hosting these games. A report showed that about a lot of the hotels and the cities were planning for a boost in the economy, but not going to see that boost because I think it was something like 70% of the hotels that were reserved the reservations have been canceled by FIFA. So what happens is FIFA will come in and book a certain number of hotels and just block so nobody else can book them for that time. But as you get closer to the event, if you don't have the numbers, they have the right to cancel some of the reservations. It's all in the contract. So about 70%, they were saying, remain on field. All right. So just living, I live close to the San Francisco Bay Area where there'll be games here too. There was this high level of enthusiasm. There still is. We're going to get a little tourists. But really, there were two phases. One was when we started looking at those ticket prices and then the government situation. And then after the war in Iran, where everything spiked and people were just like maybe a little bit flabbergasted with American government policies. And we're not. So what the general sentiment I'm getting is even from countries with disposable income, so to speak, they're now taking a little bit of a stand. We're not going to the U.S. They're looking at it as not the place to visit. I'm not tracking this data, so it might change at last. But coming to America, you got a plan. It's not something you just wake up and last minute and decide you're just going to show up because your country is there. Maybe for one game you could do it, but most of these fans when they come, they want to be able to come. And the other problem too, with even having the World Cup here is like vast different distances you got to travel, man. You might have a game in Boston, another one in Dallas. That's not a cheap ticket. And then maybe a third game in Canada or somewhere on the west coast of the United States. These aren't cheap tickets, man. The hotels aren't cheap. So I don't know. I think a lot of the reliance is on the diaspora from a lot of these countries that are already here to fill up stadiums because, hey, those are the ones that probably could afford these ticket prices anyway.
That's a good point you just made in terms of the distance. For instance, if you're in Mexico City, in Mexico's group, and you play games, and next thing your team qualifies, and the next set of games are in New Jersey, that's a whole different dynamic, man. Like now you have to travel from Mexico City to New Jersey. That ticket is not going to be cheap, especially with the jet fuel prices now. And then you fly over to Jersey. You got to plan a whole different set of accommodation and everything else that comes along with that. So that is a really good point, man. I think FIFA did this, but I don't know if they thought it through properly.
Oh, they thought it through because the check is going to come for them anyway. They're getting paid regardless. So, and I think they got guarantees from the U.S. government from certain things.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, you were seeing they were giving Trump awards that were made up awards.
Yeah, I saw that.
Peace Prize awards. FIFA always wins at the end of the day because the sponsors are there. That's where they get their money from. The ticket prices are just, those aren't the actual real revenue. The revenue is coming from all the sponsorship, and the sponsors are going to be there. But I think it's tough to see in the near future that unless things change, that the U.S. will get another World Cup, which they've already had 2. So this will be the second.
You need like the one they had in Germany made total sense, right? The one they have coming up in Portugal, Spain, and Morocco,
it still makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
I think they're going to have Uruguay, Argentina.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
you got to have World Cups. It's a double-edged sword, man. You got to have World Cups in places that can have World Cups, but then again, in places that are small enough to accommodate people. And more and more, we're seeing that, especially with 48 teams, now that you've increased to the 48 teams, it's sort of limiting who can host it.
100%.
Only one country.
Yeah. My man.
Yes,
so
sir.
Fun having you, bro. You are like a walking encyclopedia, I tell you.
Oh man, I do my research before I come, bro. That's all it is.
No, man, it's always fun having you. Listen, we're gonna put this on. Thanks again for coming out. And as we go on, we're gonna do a lot of sessions on this group stage, first set of games, and then knockout stages. So, and I'm actually gonna put out a couple of pieces about players to watch, just videos and stuff. So you'll see that as well. But, bruh, always a pleasure, man.
Hey, I salute you, man. Take care.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.